In the 18th century, Paris was a city where the scent of expensive perfume in royal courts battled the overwhelming stench of open sewers in the streets. It was the high-definition era of the Enlightenment, a digital-like transition where the elegance of the elite was about to be overwritten by the violent code of revolution. Welcome to Binary BC, your portal into the neural reconstruction of the past. Subscribe to Binary BC, now to witness the most intense historical data streams brought to life in 4,000 resolution. Our sensors lock onto Paris in the mid-1700s, a metropolis of 600,000 souls. It was the absolute heart of global culture, a place where philosophers like Voltaire and Rousseau were hacking the social contract, questioning the divine right of kings. But behind the majestic facades lay a stark binary, the extreme luxury of the aristocracy versus the crushing squalor of the masses. By the end of this journey, Binary BC will render the explosive moments of 1789, when this social inequality finally caused a total system crash. We begin at the Seine River, the central processing unit of Paris. In the 1750s, the Seine was a working artery, clogged with timber rafts and merchant barges hauling wine from Burgundy and coal to fuel the city's massive growth. The Pont Neuf spans the water, already a century and a half old, connecting the banks of a city that never slept. While the quaysides bustled with activity, the river itself was far from pristine. It served as a massive dump for raw sewage and industrial waste. Ironically, Parisians still drew their drinking water from this corrupted stream, a biological gamble that defined life in the city. Subscribe to Binary BC as we deep dive into these early urban infrastructures. Next, we render the iconic Notre Dame Cathedral on the Isle de la Cité. In the early 1700s, this Gothic masterpiece was the spiritual hard drive of the nation. But unlike the open plaza we see today, the cathedral was suffocated by a dense cluster of dark, filthy medieval buildings that leaned directly against its walls. The air here was thick with the smell of horse manure and waste, yet from the king to the lowest beggar, everyone converged here for the daily masses and royal ceremonies. Notre Dame stood as a stone witness to the layers of history being built on top of the original medieval island. Our data stream shifts to a lost wonder, the Hôtel de Soissons. Built for Catherine de' Medici, its most striking feature was a 28-meter astronomical tower designed for the Queen's obsession with astrology. By the 1700s, this palace was a noble oasis in one of the city's most congested districts near Les Halles, the central food market. The contrast was brutal. Inside the palace walls were geometric gardens and elegance. Just outside, the streets were perpetually slick with rotting vegetables, animal blood from butchers, and mountains of waste. This palace was eventually deleted from the landscape in 1748, leaving no trace in the modern shopping districts of today. We then approached the Temple, the formidable headquarters of the Knights of Malta. This was a semi-autonomous zone, a black hole in the city's legal system where normal taxes and guild laws didn't apply. This attracted luxury craftsmen and aristocrats seeking to operate outside the system. However, the temple's most chilling data point occurs during the Revolution, when its medieval tower was converted into a high-security prison for King Louis XVI and his family. Napoleon eventually ordered the entire fortress to be wiped from the map to prevent it from becoming a royalist shrine. The vibrant energy of 18th-century trade is best seen at the Foire Saint-Germain. For 6 weeks every year, this neoclassic complex became a temporary shopping mall and entertainment hub. Aristocrats in silk coats mingled with merchants under covered arcades, buying exotic porcelain, jewelry, and rare books. It was a simulation of the modern shopping experience, complete with cafes and gambling dens, until the revolution suppressed the fair in 1789. For a look at the absolute peak of noble living, we render the Hôtel de Lines on the left bank. These aristocratic palaces were massive estates with dozens of rooms for entertaining and private river access. While the public streets were buried in filth, these private quays were meticulously swept by servants. But this level of extravagance in the face of public hunger was a ticking time bomb. Most of these palaces were destroyed or confiscated when the revolution began. Subscribe to Binary BC to see more lost estates of the world's elite. No reconstruction of the 1700s is complete without the Palace of Versailles. Located 12 miles outside the city, this was the central command center for the French monarchy. Louis XVI transformed a hunting lodge into Europe's largest palace with over 700 rooms. In 1682, he moved the entire government here, forcing the nobility to compete for his favor in elaborate, choreographed ceremonies. The formal gardens were a masterpiece of controlled nature, but the cost was astronomical. The palace consumed a vast portion of the nation's tax revenue, while the common people struggled to afford a single loaf of bread. This massive disconnect between the Versailles Code and the reality of the streets was the primary reason for the eventual system failure. Science also had its place in the city's logic. The Observatoire de Paris, founded in 1667, was the site where the meridian line was established, serving as the reference for all French maps. It was a temple to the Enlightenment, attracting the world's greatest astronomers to track the movements of the stars away from the city's smoke. Similarly, Les Invalides was built as a military hospital and retirement home for wounded veterans. With its iconic golden dome, it was a rare example of the state providing care and dignity to those who fought its wars. But by the late 1780s, the French system reached a breaking point. Bankrupted by war and royal spending, and crippled by poor harvests, the kingdom was in freefall. When the king tried to suppress the demands of the commoners, the people responded with force. On July 13, 1789, a mob stormed the Saint Lazare prison, hunting for hoarded grain as rumors of starvation spread. They smashed windows and seized supplies, a precursor to the main event. On July 14, 1789, the data stream hits its most violent peak, the storming of the Bastille. This medieval fortress was the ultimate symbol of royal tyranny. Thousands of Parisians marched on its walls, demanding gunpowder. After 4 hours of musket fire and cannon blasts, the fortress fell. The governor was killed, and his head was paraded on a pike, a gruesome signal that the old regime was dead. The Bastille was systematically demolished, its stones used to build bridges, ensuring that the symbol of the king's power was literally walked upon by the people. The grand palaces and churches we have explored today are only the surface of the story. Beneath the elegance was a struggle for basic human rights and survival. The ideas of liberty and equality that were coded in the blood of 18th century Paris have since spread to every corner of the globe. Thank you for exploring this reconstructed era with Binary BC. The streets of the 1700s are long gone, but their influence remains in our modern laws and architecture. If you want to see another city or another era brought back to life, drop a comment below. Your hometown might be our next neural reconstruction. Subscribe to Binary BC and keep history alive in the digital age. We will see you in the next era.